This week's chapter of Ethics of the Fathers is chapter 2. As we've explained, we do 6 chapters from Passover to Shavuos, and then we do it 3 more times, 3 sets from after Shavuos until Rosh Hashanah. So this week is the 2nd chapter. This week on Sabbath, on Shabbos, we will be studying the 2nd chapter. This is a week of the 2nd chapter. In the 2nd chapter, I wanted to explore the 10th statement. We have here one of the greatest sages the Jews ever had. His name was Rabbi Yochanan, the son of Zakkai, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of the Jews during one of the most horrific times the Jews had, the destruction of the Second Temple and after. Actually, we credit Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai with saving Torah, which means saving the tradition, saving the religion, saving the continuation, because at that time when the Romans were surrounding Jerusalem, they were so bloodthirsty. They were so furious with us. They would wipe out any Jewish leader, which of course meant any scholar, and all would be lost. They were going to wipe out the house of David. They were going to wipe out all the Torah scholars. They, of course, were going to destroy the temple. They wanted to destroy not just the Jewish people, but even more importantly, they wanted to destroy Judaism. In every generation, they could call it something different. Nowadays, they like to say anti-Zionism because it's nothing against Jews, right? You know, a few decades ago, it was anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism sounded very clean and scientific and racial. It's nothing with religion. This is a racial concept. And of course, in earlier times, it was the religion. It was the Jews that rejected the Savior. And going back to the Romans, when they're all barbarians and pagans, they still hated us because we weren't, because we didn't serve idols. So whatever the issue is that the people have, there's something embedded that they're going to look at the Jews and decide they are that thing. The joke is, at the same time, in one country, they hate the poor. The Jews are all poor. Same time, in another country, they hate the rich. The Jews are all rich. You hate the communists. The Jews are communists. You hate the Democrats. The Jews are Democrats. Like, it doesn't make a difference. So we don't want to try to dance to anyone's dance because it doesn't make a difference anyway. So the Romans, without any of the trappings of Christianity or anything else, these are pure idolaters, absolutely hated the Jewish people and wanted to wipe out Jews and Judaism. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the greatest sage of that time, he was in Jerusalem and he understood this and he knew he had to save Judaism. And I'm not going to go into the whole story of how he managed to escape the besieged city of Jerusalem. He actually went out as a corpse and got to the Romans. And God, of course, with his perfect timing, made things happen that he comes to the general, Vespasian, and he honors him as if he's the emperor, the Caesar. And he's like, whoa, that's treason. And literally at that moment, as they're having this back and forth, the messenger rushes in saying that the previous Caesar, I don't know what happened. I don't know if he died a peaceful death. That didn't happen too often to Caesars, but the Senate had appointed Vespasian to be the next Caesar of Rome. So he was like, wow, this guy's holy. This guy knows what he's talking about. Wow. And he says, what can I do for you? What can you really were the one that gave me this news. What can I do? In other words, God set the whole thing up. And he said, I have 3 requests. One request is to heal a saint, a very, 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 very holy Jew who had been fasting for decades to prevent the destruction of the temple. He was so thin that they said if you squeezed a fig, the juice of a fig, you could see it literally going through his body. His body was so emaciated. So that sounds like a very innocuous request. Here's an old man who's been fasting for years and years and years. Get him a doctor, right? Like a personal request. It must be a friend of his. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did this with a lot of wisdom because, that's just a small request. So things are also small. So he said, give me Yavne and her sages. He knew he couldn't ask for Jerusalem. He knew Jerusalem he wouldn't get. He knew he couldn't ask for the temple. He knew he wouldn't get that. He said, give me Yavne, which was a city of Torah, and her sages. I'll give you that too. It's just one little city, a bunch of old Jews sitting and learning. What do I care? And he said, the heir, the descendant from the house of David, that he should live. Okay. King of David, he hasn't been king for a long time. The tribe of David actually hadn't been king since really the story of Hanukkah, because since then it was that family that took over. So again, doesn't sound like such a big deal. Oh, yeah, I could do that too. And what basically Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did was he ensured that Torah would survive, that there would be the scholars, and that the house of David, the line of kings, the line of Mashiach would survive as well. So that is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who, as I'm saying, was the leader of his times. Now, the Ethics of the Fathers says, so Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has these 5 students. Now, obviously, he doesn't have 5 students. He has thousands and thousands and thousands of students. So these 5 were, from all of his students, the top ones, and they represented really 5 different roads in serving God. So all the other students went into one of these, so to speak, 5 camps of serving God. All godly, all pure, all holy, 5 different traits, 5 different spiritual energies, spiritual frequencies in terms of service of God. And he said to them, to these top students, who again are really the leaders of each one, thousands and thousands of students, he asked some questions that are recorded here in the Mishnah. And he asked, one of the questions he asked, I'm not going to go through all of them, just one, he said, go and see which is the good way a man should cleave to. Go and tell me what's the best way that a man should go. All right. Now, obviously, he's a teacher. He should have the answers, but he was turning to them because he understood that each one of them, again, is representing a different specialty in serving God. So each one from their specialty, from their forte, what is the best way a man should walk? What is the best thing a man should do to serve God, to be the best person possible? And he got 5 different answers. One said, having a good eye. That's the best way. That's the best road a man should go on. You should develop having a good eye. Another one said, having a good friend. The best thing we need in life is a good friend. Another one said, having a good neighbor. A good neighbor, that's a gift from God. That's the best. Another one says, one who sees the future, one who sees what will be. In sort of basic terminology, decoding that meaning, one who considers the consequences of his actions, one who sees the future. And the last one said a good heart, a good eye, a good friend, a good neighbor, considering the consequences of your action, like seeing what will be in the future, and a good heart. So the classical commentator on Ethics of the Fathers, which really the classical commentator on all of Mishnah, Ethics of the Fathers is part of Mishnah. Mishnah is the first written systematic codification of the oral law that happened post the destruction of the Second Temple. His name was Rabbi Ovadia Bartenura. Ovadia means servant of God. Bartenura, some wines that are called Bartenura, they're named after him. He was from Italy. Maybe that's why. He is the most classical commentator on all of Mishnah, including Ethics of the Fathers. Lived a long time ago, relatively speaking. He was born in 1455 and passed away in 1520. At that time when he was born, there was a flourishing community in Italy. So this is in the mid 1400s, because later we don't really see Italy producing the giants of Torah of the religious Jewish world. But in the mid 1400s, they were a big, important community. He became one of the greatest rabbis of Italy, which meant of the Jewish world at that time. He, in Italy, authored this classical commentary on the entire Mishnah, which is 6 tractates. It's a lot. And then in 1486, he decided he wanted to go live in Israel. Now, in those days, he's in Italy. If you think of the map from Italy to Israel, that's just a little hop, skip away. But not in the mid 1400s. It was a very unusual trip to take, sort of a long, arduous, there were a lot of pirates on the oceans in those days, but he did it. I wouldn't even ask you to guess how long it took. It took him 18 months. He traveled 18 months from Italy to Israel. It's actually very interesting because he wrote his father, who was still alive then, a long letter describing everything on his journey. And we have that letter. It's still existent. And that's really like a travelogue telling us a lot about life in the 1400s. So anyway, he gets to Israel and he comes to Jerusalem. And very quickly, he becomes the leader of all the Jews of Jerusalem. He was not only respected by the Jews, the non-Jews. This time in the 1400s, we're talking about the Muslims. They also respected him. When he was passed, he was mourned by the Jews of Israel, by the non-Jews, and by really Jews worldwide. So he is the classical commentator on ethics of the fathers. And this is how he explains these 5 points, just very, so to speak, simply the basic meaning of these words. What does it mean? The best thing is a good eye. What does it mean? The best thing is a good friend. What does it mean? The best thing is a good neighbor. I mean, yeah, we appreciate a good friend, we appreciate a good neighbor, but this is the best thing that you should cleave to. This is what's going to help you the most in your life. So he explains a good eye means someone who's satisfied with what they have. So the sage that said, the best thing is a good eye. And of course, as I'm saying this, all of us can sort of like think how we would relate to this and what we would think would be the best thing and how these points relate to us. So a good eye means that you're not jealous when you see others have more than you or others have things you don't have. That's a discontented eye, an unhappy eye. Now, some people have a good eye naturally, and some people need to cultivate a good eye. And cultivating a good eye means really cultivating the sense of, I'm so blessed, I'm so fortunate, everything I need, I have, everything I need, God's giving me. If I don't have it, I don't need it. If I need it, God will give it. Really feeling truly content in your space, in your life as God has given you. That is a good eye. And this sage said, this is the best. If you have a good eye, you're going to avoid all of these negative emotions that plague people, which all start off with discontent and jealousy and feeling less than and feeling dissatisfied. And all those negative emotions, you have a good eye. Cultivate a good eye. Feel satisfied and blessed and rich with your life. It will put you in a very good space with you and man and with you and God. The next sage of these 5, again, don't think of these as like, teenager students. These are all great sages in their own right, because these were the 5 top students of world Jewry at that time, of all the students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So the next sage said, a good friend. Now you could say, all right, that's interesting, meaning, yeah, we all want a good friend and we all appreciate a good friend, but why would a good friend be like this most significant quality that would help you primarily more than anything else in serving God is having a good friend? Now, actually, there's many reasons for this. I'm just following the Bartenura's explanation. We could probably come up with our own of other reasons why a good friend would be very beneficial. But what he said is a good friend is going to tell you off when he sees you're not doing the right thing. And other people, if they're not as close to you and they don't feel as concerned for you or as comfortable talking to you openly, pretend it's all good, pretend, like they're not going to tell you straight, this is wrong. And every one of us, to really grow and be the person we need to be, sometimes we need to be put in our place. Sometimes we need to be told, like, maybe this isn't the best thing to do. Well, who's going to tell you that? I mean, when you're a child, you could have parents, you could have teachers, but once you're not a child, who's going to tell you when you're doing something wrong? So this sage is saying, who tells you? A good friend, a person who cares about you, who's going to be honest and straight with you. I don't know if anyone here has had that situation where they see a friend doing something wrong and they're like, I don't want to tell them. I don't want to make them uncomfortable. I don't want to embarrass them. I don't want to strain our relationship, but this is wrong. And like someone needs to do it. When we're looking at people, at good friends of ours, and we see that they're not doing the right thing, as a good friend, we're supposed to tell them in a nice way. We're supposed to let them know that this isn't right what they're doing. And conversely, if you have a good friend, and if your good friend does let you know what you're doing is wrong, we should appreciate that. Thank God I have a good friend. Thank God I have someone who's going to be honest and straight with me, because nobody else would. And I could just go my wrong, merry way. But because I have a good friend, someone's pulling me back in line. So this sage is saying that literally a good friend is so significant for a person's growth because, like, once you're a child, who's going to keep you on? Who's going to tell you wrong? Who's going to tell you when you need to change? The third sage said a good neighbor. So that he's sort of going on the line of the second stage, but looks at it slightly differently. Why? What's the advantage of a good neighbor over a good friend? Good neighbor, like a good friend, is someone who's close to you, is someone who'll talk to you openly, but a good neighbor is around a lot more. I mean, meaning like a neighbor, not like in the suburbs where you barely know your neighbors. Maybe if you both walk dogs, you'll see each other, No, like when the Jews lived in close quarters and your neighbors saw you very much and you saw them very much. So in a sense, that neighbor knows you better than anyone. They're living right next to you, probably a few feet away, and they hear everything and see everything. Like it or not, your neighbor knows you very, very, very well. Of course, there are certain areas where people live where they still have those neighbors that, like it or not, are very aware of what's going on in their neighbors' homes because that's how the homes are set up. I know when I was hearing from people in this class, what it was like in Russia, where you really had those neighbors that really were right at your door or in your apartment, and they really knew what was going on. So a good neighbor, now again, a neighbor doesn't mean a good neighbor. You could have someone that knows everything in your life, and that's a very uncomfortable feeling. And that's not positive or helpful or making you a better person. But a good neighbor, even more than a good friend, one who sees it all and then can gently give you guidance because they know what's happening. Oh, this is really, really helpful in serving God. The fourth sage said, one who sees what will be in the future, which basically means seeing the future means he's considering the consequence of actions. He's not just living in the here and now, because when you live in the here and now, there could be many things that are pulling at you that if you thought about it, you wouldn't do. And there'd be some things you're not interested in doing, but if you thought about it, you would do it. Meaning, like in terms of serving God, sometimes God wants something, but it's uncomfortable, or you're not interested, or it costs money that you don't want to spend, or it takes time that you don't think you have. So those are all losses. The loss is, I'm not interested. The loss is, it's requiring time I don't have. It's requiring money I don't have. It's going to crimp my style. It's going to, ruffle my norm. Those are losses. But if a person looks to the future, if he looks to what's going to be later, he's like, this is serving God. This means God and I are one. This means I'm giving to the Creator. This means I'm bonding and fusing with the Creator. It's worth it. There's a temporary discomfort. It's the summer, it's hot. Thank God now it's not hot. Believe it or not, it's June. And thank you. Thank you, God. I love this June weather in Chicago. But eventually it'll get hot. And you'll be like, it's hot and I don't want to be dressed like this and so modest and so covered. It's so uncomfortable. Those are losses. And if I'm just thinking of the current moment, those are big losses. Why would I want to dress modestly? But if I think of the future and I say, wait, this is what God wants from me. This means I'm giving God something. This means I'm doing something for God. This means God and I are one. This means I'm opening myself up to all of God's blessings and rewards and divine energy. This means I'm a partner with God in the process of refining this world and bringing redemption. This means a lot of huge things. Yes, there's a temporary discomfort, but wow, if I look ahead, it's so worth it. Just if you could envision someone who finished high school and what, 4 more years of school and so much money to invest. I just want to start working, ready to make money. And you could say, well, you could start working and make money, but you're probably going to get $14 an hour. And maybe if you took, maybe not university, maybe you took a course, maybe you followed your interest and developed yourself, It doesn't have to necessarily be academic. You could learn a trade, become an electrician, become a plumber. There's many things you can do besides going to university, but an eye to the future, if you invest time now in training, you could have a much more lucrative profession than if you're, working in Walmart because you didn't want to take the time to train or go to school or go to college. You want to make money now. If you have an eye to the future, you understand, let me invest now. It'll be worth it. So he's saying the same thing with Judaism. And conversely, in the negative, if you want to do something that God doesn't want, and you could be like, oh, but this is so good to do it. It'll feel so good. I'll enjoy it so much. That's the gain. He says, yeah, but if you have an eye to the future, you see a lot of losses. You have a loss in terms of your relationship with God. You have a loss in terms of your connection with God. You have a loss in terms of the evil that's coming to this world because you're transgressing God's will. There's a lot of losses. Not worth it. So this sage is saying, when a person thinks of the consequences of his actions, both pushing, inspiring himself to do the positive or to hold back from the negative, or in general in life, like I was, giving the obvious little example of someone with a career, there's so many things in our life where if we're only thinking of the here and now, think of food, obviously, that should be the first example I should have given, right? I want it. It tastes good, tremendous eye, hand, mouth coordination. But if I thought to the future, this is not good for me. This is going to make me sick. I'm going to feel really bad after I ate this. I'm going to have a reaction. This is not good for me. I don't want this. Well, now I want it. But if I can consider the consequences of my actions, if I could think to the future, I don't want this. So this sage is saying this quality of thinking ahead, of stopping yourself from the moment and thinking, what are the future ramifications? This is the most critical factor. And this will really keep a person in a very, very good space. And the fifth sage said, the most significant thing is a good heart, because the heart is the motor of everything else. The heart makes everything happen. It all starts in the heart. So if my catalyst, if the motor, if the pump is in a good space, everything is going to be good. If I'm feeling right and in tuned and aligned with positive emotions, with godly emotions, with love for God, with love for Israel, with love for Torah, with love for the Jewish people, I'm going to make the right choices. I'm going to do the right thing, because what happens in my heart affects everything in my whole world. And the leader, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, actually selected this fifth answer as the best answer. And he said, a good heart, that answer truly contains all the other answers, meaning the good eye, the good friend, the good neighbor, considering the consequence of your actions. All of that is contained within someone having a good heart. That was the simple way of looking at this concept. And I thought the simple way was really powerful and really gives us a lot of food for thought in terms of ourself and how we're living our life and the choices we make in terms of our contented or not I and our friends and our neighbors, and looking to the future and where our heart's holding, which really Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is saying is the ultimate answer, because it contains all of them. To probe a little more deeply on this, I'm going to just focus on one of these five, the idea of one who sees the future. This was the sage Reb Shimon. This was his answer from the five, one who sees the future. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe analyzes this a little, and he says, again, what did Reb Shimon mean by responding to his teacher, Reb Yochanan ben Zakkai's question, what is the best trait a person should cleave to? And he said, one who sees the future. So, as we explained, one who sees the future means if you see something has a reward, so to speak, in the beginning and a loss at the end, you distance yourself from it. And if a person is really living that way, they're always going to make really smart, wise, good choices. Imagine if we lived that way. We would only eat really the best foods. We would only make very appropriate choices with how we spend our time, how we spend our money, how we spend our resources. what we do with our life, how we serve God, if we could train ourselves to look to the future and think of the consequences, this really creates a very worthy human being. But the Rebbe says, obviously, this means it. And this is exactly what we said the Bartanura said. And this is the simple meaning of these words. One who sees the future, one who sees the consequences, one who understands current reality, future reality, looking at the gain loss spreadsheet, and he makes wise decisions because he doesn't just look at the here and now, he looks at long-term consequences. It says, but if that's all it means, it shouldn't say one who sees the future. It should say more precisely, one who understands the future. What do you mean one who sees the future? You're not seeing the future. You're understanding, positive today, not worth it, right? A lot of people make very bad financial decisions because they're only thinking of the present tense. If they saw the future, they would make different choices. As we said, people make bad choices in terms of sometimes spouses, sometimes decisions in the family. Many choices people make only looking at the here and now. Unfortunately, in our world, many people choose to have very few children because they're not thinking long term. So there's a lot of people in this world that don't see the future. And if they did, they would make different decisions. There says it's not called seeing the future. We're not seeing it. We're understanding it. You can say, yeah, see the future. Oh, I see what you mean. Like, we use the word see sort of interchangeably for understand. But this isn't casual conversation. This is Torah. This is recorded Torah. This is literally recording the words. This is the first recording of Torah. This is Mishnah. So everything is very precise and very significant. So in our casual conversation, we could say, oh, I see it. Like, oh, I get it. I see what you mean. I understand what you're saying. We can say that. But the Mishnah would be precise. The Mishnah would say one who understands the future, but it doesn't. He said one who sees it. So why did he say see instead of understand? Now, these 5 students, they all came up with different answers to seemingly a question they should have all been on unison with. I mean, they're all holy and spiritual and godly and very learned, all students of the same great, great, great sage, one of the greatest sages the Jews ever had, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, as I explained to you, really the savior of Judaism. Why did they have 5 different answers? And the commentators explain that every student, when he was sincerely trying to answer this question, he was really thinking, what is the most important trait a person should have? Almost, if we will, unconsciously, the student sort of looked at himself. Not like, oh, I'm so great. Let me look at myself and see what my shining trait is. And that must be the most important trait for man to have. But more just like unconsciously, this is his thing. And when you have your thing, that's what you see. If you're very into always seeing the hand of God, that's what you see. If you're always into fear, that's what you see. The world is a fearful place. If you're always into Jewish pride, that's what you see. So one person can be so fearful from the news and one person can be full of Jewish pride from the news. Hello? Well, it depends what your thing is. It depends what you see. You process the world through your vision. So Reb Shimon, who chose as a most significant trait seeing the future, is we're told that Reb Shimon was very, very God-fearing and very fearful of sin. And he was really thinking, not like, how do I get the rest of the world to model me? But really, as he understood life, he was thinking, what is the trait that I want to advise the Jewish people to have, that they'll live a godly life, that they'll live a life fearing to do wrong if they see the future? Not if they understand the future, but if they see it. What do I mean by saying if they see the future versus if they understand the future? Understanding the future means intellectually getting it, recognizing, in the case that we're talking about here, the loss caused by sin. And there are major losses when one sins. There's separation from God. That's a pretty big loss. But if you know it, if you really, really understand the loss in a negative behavior, I don't have to tell you this because I think we've all lived this. We all know that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to do the right thing. I mean, the Germans were the most educated race, right? They were the intellectuals, the academics, they had the scientists, they had culture, they had music, and they had the Holocaust. So knowledge is not a guarantee of virtue. So understanding something, that doesn't mean you make the right choice, even if you completely understand what's right and what's wrong. You know, I gave before, of course, the most classical example, which is food, you know, what we eat. And how many of us know exactly what's good for us and what's bad for us and the times we should eat and the quantities we should eat and the qualities we should eat. We know everything. But then we just eat. And similarly, in many, many other areas of our life, we could understand something very, very well. Does this ever happen to me? Is my mind telling me what I should do, but I can't be bothered listening? I don't want to listen. I turned a deaf ear to what my brain is saying. I don't let it talk because I don't want to hear it. So, as we all know personally, I'm sure, and from seeing others, knowing is not a guarantee to proper choices, proper behavior, proper conduct, proper morals and ethics and values. And we didn't even put in the equation the evil inclination, right? The evil inclination is very crafty, very sly, very clever. The evil inclination can prove to us intellectually that it's worth it to do the wrong. And I'm sure we have all sometimes been victim to that twisted logic. So I could know the right thing, and the passions in my heart make me not listen to what my brain is saying. I could know the right thing, and my evil inclination is twisting my brain to say a very distorted version of what just is the straight and simple truth. So therefore, Reb Shimon didn't say one who understands what will be in the future, because understanding means your intellect, and intellect doesn't always cut it. He said one who sees it, because seeing, like we all say, seeing is believing. Seeing isn't intellectual. Seeing is such a deep truth, higher than intellect, that it's like you see it. Meaning when I say I see it, I'm not saying I understand it. It's much deeper than understanding. It's beyond understanding. Like, just bottom line, if you saw something, no proof in the world could be stronger than what you saw. That's actually why in Jewish law, a witness could never be a judge. Because once you've seen something with your eyes have so convinced you of the story, it doesn't make a difference if it was completely wrong and it was the same, it doesn't make a difference. You saw it. Nothing can change what you saw. Sight, there's a very powerful point to understand in general. Sight is enrooted in our soul higher, deeper than intellect. Intellect, I could be swayed. Or for that matter, hearing. Hearing is not enrooted as deeply as seeing. So I could hear something and someone could get me not believe what I heard, what I was taught, what I was told. Hearing, understanding, those are open negotiables. But seeing is not really a negotiable. When you see it, it's so deeply enrooted in you. That's the truth. It'd be very hard for someone to convince you of a truth different than what your own eyes saw. And we probably all have had experiences like that in life when we saw something. It doesn't matter what anyone ever told us. We saw it. We saw it. That's it. I had once an experience many years ago with Moshe when he was quite young. Now he's 18. Maybe he was like, I don't know, 4. I don't remember exactly, something along those lines. and he ate an apricot and he couldn't swallow it, couldn't chew it and swallow it. It got stuck in his throat, like right here. And he was rushed to the hospital. And we went to the hospital near us, Swedish Covenant. And they were like, oh, okay, there's enough of an airway passage and he's gonna, it's not at this moment. You're going to transferring you to Children's Memorial. They're going to have to do a surgery and pull it out. And we don't do that. Like pediatrics, he's a little kid. We're not touching it. And of course, when you get transferred to another hospital, you wait a long time if they think you have time. And I've been through this several times, so I know. And as we were waiting, originally when we first came in, there's like all these doctors and nurses in the room, but then like everyone leaves and there's one nurse who's like monitoring the situation and me and Moshe. And I'm there with Moshe. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I felt really bad because we rushed out. So I had like nothing on me. I didn't have any holy books. I didn't have a Psalms to say. I had nothing. And I guess I somehow had in my bag a picture of the Rebbe, a card with a picture of the Rebbe. And I literally took this picture and I put it on his throat, like somehow in my mind, exactly where I thought the apricot was. Like, and as soon as I put it on, he went like, ah! And he like somehow expelled the whole thing. This whole huge apricot that was stuck that the doctors were too scared to do anything with, he literally expelled out totally clean. Now, of course, being in the hospital, they didn't let us leave then. They still wanted to monitor him for a few more hours to make sure his airways were fine and not scratched. And anyways, now it's hours later and we're leaving the hospital, thank God. And I had found out over the course of these hours that this one nurse that was in the room with me was Jewish. So when we're leaving, I offered her this card I had with a picture of the Rebbe on it because that was the only thing I had on me to give her. And she was like, no. Like she doesn't do that. Like, no, thanks. And I said to her, you were in the room with me. It was just me, you and him. You saw, I put this on his throat and suddenly that whole apricot just, he chucked out of his throat. You saw it. And she looked at me and she took the card. And the point that I was saying to her was really, in essence, this idea. Something tells you, you could not believe it. You hear it, you don't believe it. Someone's giving a talk, you don't believe it. Your eyes saw it. You yourself saw this happen. And she did. And she couldn't deny what she saw herself. And she took the card. So sight is a really very powerful tool we have from God. Because whatever we see makes a tremendous, tremendous impact on us. Whatever we see, we believe, like it or not. So when this sage is saying one who sees the future, he doesn't literally mean you seeing the future. Obviously, we don't see the future. But what he means is you have such a relationship with God. It's like you're seeing it, meaning sight is higher than intellect. The evil inclination can't overcome you when your service isn't based on intellect. When your relationship to God is from intellect, okay, this is your intellect. He could distort your intellect. Your evil inclination can give you a different intellect. Your evil inclination can poke holes in your intellect. Your evil inclination can make you crazy with intellect. If we just stay on an intellectual basis in terms of our relationship with God, it's shaky grounds. But when our relationship to God is on the level that we're calling here sight, not understanding, higher than understanding, deeper than understanding, as deeply embedded in us as if we're seeing it. And what you see, you believe in. That's it. Then that's it. When I have that degree of relationship with God, I'm not going to choose the wrong path. I'm looking ahead to the future. I know what's significant, and I'm going to make the right choices. So really, what the sage is saying is, don't be satisfied with an intellectual relationship with God. You understand some things, and those are nice and meaningful and significant, and you coast on that. He's saying, no, our brains can go in many different twisted directions. We want to deepen our relationship with God and really get in touch with our core, our Jewish core. Because our Jewish core belief in God and relationship with God goes far deeper than our mind, which practically means if my relationship is intellectual, I will serve with those things that make sense to me. And if it makes sense to me, I'll do it. If it doesn't make sense to me, I won't, because it's intellectual. But when I'm going deeper than intellect, when I'm going to my core, when I'm going to that Jewish essence, then it doesn't have to make sense to me. And sometimes I might do what God wants and actually realize it does make sense. And sometimes it will never make sense to me, but that's okay. Because I don't want to limit my relationship to God to what makes sense. I want my relationship to God to be like sight, that it's so deep, nothing can ever shake it. And to have that deep relationship, it's not limited to intellect. It's far, far, far deeper than intellect.